Like, I wasn't expecting the crew here to be what it is, but being able to drive through the rain like this in a pretty accurate simulation of country roads based on where I live, which is in the country, is pretty beautiful. And yes, it's true, I'm not a graphics snob. I don't exactly have an incredibly high standard for graphics, but I think there's something really beautiful about what I'm doing here, taking this casual drive through the countryside in roads that look very familiar to roads that I'm used to seeing in real life, but with with a larger than life style, a larger than life coat of paint, let's say, that the crew gives it. That blue line is a marker to where we're driving, by the way. It's not anywhere in particular. I just put a blue marker somewhere on the map and we're driving there. I started driving somewhere in Ohio-ish, around Johnston. I'm gonna call it Johnstown. This is the only game I've found where I actually want to drive from the driver's perspective, and then only when it rains, but that's still something, right? Usually I only drive from a third-person perspective, but in this game, when it rains specifically, I drive from the driver's perspective. I wouldn't want to do any of the racing events this way, but still, I think it looks quite pretty. And as someone that's very terrified of driving in real life, being able to drive all over the United States, or at least a condensed and simultaneously larger-than-life cartoonish version of the United States, is very appealing. I don't know, it just feels a little surreal sometimes, being so outwardly optimistic about games and treating them all as unique, beautiful experiences when that's not normally how games are consumed. I don't know. I know that that it would be unreasonable for everyone to play games like me and go into... Oh, it seems the rain stopped. For everyone to go into games not looking for something in particular, but instead looking to see what the game offers. But I feel like people would appreciate games more if they did that. If they approached it this way. Just to see the worlds that the developers made and what they're trying to say, appreciating the creativity and even the small things, like the fish on this covered bridge. There's actually not that many covered bridges in America, I think. The photo mode in this game is excellent, by the way. You can adjust a lot of settings, you can move the camera around freely, you can even remove your vehicle, the pedestrians, the NPC vehicles, and you can tilt the camera, you can put tints on it, remove the motion blur, add motion blur. It's really good for taking tourist-style photos of interesting things, or just taking really cool pictures of your car driving in some place you think is particularly pretty looking. I really like the night driving in this game in particular. Or the evening and the late evening and night driving, I should say. The country roads are a bit wider than they are in real life, and the roadside signs, I think we're about to come up on some right here. The roadside restaurants, they do look like this, but the roadside restaurants in this game obviously have a bigger budget to work with than the things in real life that you'd see. Like, I have no doubt that if a country roadside restaurant did have the money to make a giant Fry's statue like this, they absolutely would, but they usually don't have that kind of money. But aside from the... I mean, I already said it's like a larger-than-life version of the real thing. I'm absolutely certain if all the roadside diners I saw could afford a giant Fry's statue, then it would be there. This game just has a kind of impenetrable atmosphere to me. I think it's a really lovely looking game, no matter where in the country you're driving at. But this is an area of the country I'm more familiar with. And I'm usually not a fan of this part of the country in real life. But it, I don't know, there's something about the way the crew does it that makes it more appealing to look at to me. Maybe it's because the roads are wider, so they feel less claustrophobic, or it's the cartoony nature of the things that normally seem so cynical. It just seems like a more pure version of a place I'm used to seeing a lot, like a more light-hearted, innocent version of something I'm used to seeing all the time. I haven't played this game a lot yet. Like, I was always vaguely interested in it because I play a lot of driving games, and it's an open-world driving game, and I like those. The thing that prompted me to get it recently was that it's an online-only game, and I didn't know that. So that means it's going to go down sometime, and I wanted to play it before it went down. A very close friend got it for me for my birthday, a bit early, but still, for my birthday. It's a very good present. It's a very relaxing game. There's a lot of pick your own corn signs in this game. By the way, just so you know, there's a lot of those all over the country. The rural country in particular, not the more populated city areas. There's a lot of cool stuff to just stop and take in and look at. And I was worried you wouldn't be able to get a good angle on it, but with the photo mode, you can look at it from pretty much any angle you want to. And that just makes it a whole lot nicer. It makes me feel like a tourist in this weird cartoony version of real life. Also, it helps that the radio station I'm playing has generally calm and relaxing music. There are some radio stations in this game with really excitable music, which feels a little weird for the way I play the game, which is just to drive around and look at stuff. But you know, it is a driving game. There are racing missions and slalom missions and drag races and checkpoints and all kinds of different collectibles and stuff. And the thing is, there are like several cars to choose from, and I've only used this one, so I can't talk about how the game's handling feels in general. I can say the handling on this specific car feels perfectly reasonable. I've seen a lot of people complain about the handling in this game, but I've played a lot of driving games and I think the car handles just fine. I don't see any problem with this specific car, but, you know, not everyone uses this car all the time, I'm sure. There are other cars to pick from, and it's a car RPG, so you can upgrade the cars in their various parts, so there's still a lot that I'm not experiencing. But I can say that this car, at least, in its mostly default state, handles perfectly fine. And since the developer of this game has a lot of history with driving games, I believe they were involved with the Test Drive series. I feel like they probably knew what they were doing. I don't think the car handling is realistic or anything, but I don't really want to drive a realistic vehicle. I very much go out of my way to avoid playing driving games that have realistic vehicle handling in them. I just don't appreciate that. I know there are a lot of people that do, but I don't think this is the right game for that. This game is a more arcadey kind of driving game, like the Driver series or the Driver series, or the often overlooked Driver series. That's really the only comparison I can think of, because the other open world driving games I've played have controls that are too forgiving to be compared to this. Like the original Watch Dogs and Sleeping Dogs, the driving controls in those games, they're too smooth to be compared to this. Like, they're so smooth that pretty much anyone could drive the vehicles in Watch Dogs and Sleeping Dogs near perfectly if they've ever played a driving game before. There's a little more nuance to the handling, at least in this specific car, than there is in Watch Dogs or Sleeping Dogs. Not that those games have inferior driving, it's just a different kind of handling. My controller seems to have disconnected, which is a problem. I was actually incredibly surprised by Sleeping Dogs car handling, because it's the most forgiving car handling I've ever seen in a driving game. At no point in Sleeping Dogs was I ever even remotely in danger of losing one of the driving missions, even the optional ones. At no point was I ever in danger of losing. But that's because I've played a lot of harder driving games, like the Driver series and the Midnight Club series. So having handling that forgiving... Hold on, we definitely need to stop and look at this. This is what I mean by the roadside diners having more budget in this game than they do in real life. But like I said, absolutely, if the roadside diners could have signs that large, they would. Trust me. There's a city in the distance. I think we're coming up on the marker now. I didn't put the marker anywhere in particular, though. I mean, I think driving around in the crew is fun, and even if these first 2 hours were the only fun I had in the game, I think it was worth it. Because it was a really beautiful experience for these 2 hours, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to continue to enjoy driving around in the crew. And the driving missions themselves seem pretty fun. As a fan of driving games, they seem alright. So far they're pretty normal, but there's nothing wrong with that. Driving missions is driving missions. I like driving missions. I like driving video games. I'm a little unsure how the RPG mechanics will factor in ultimately, but I guess I'll see later. So far it seems like a pretty alright driving game. Alright, we're here at the marker. I really like the paint job I put on this thing.